So I appreciate everybody coming today. I know that many of you here may be on a lunch hour or something. So my goal really is, and I'm going to do quite a few of these in the next 3 or 4 months, is everybody know the country, we've got a lot of challenges right now, a lot of issues, you know, not just jobs in the economy, you know, the thing about what tragic thing that happened to the kids and guns and spending and so a lot of things that I've got to take a lot of tough votes probably in the next 2 or 3 months as it relates to spending. So my thought is just to get out and do a listening tour. I tell people I'm humbled as a blue-collar kid to be a congressman, but at the end of the day I'm a representative. And the better I can get a sense of what your thoughts are, your ideas, it helps me better represent you in Washington. So let's keep in mind the idea. I want to get your thoughts and ideas. I'm glad to comment on anything if you want me to, but I'd really like to hear your ideas, your thoughts, what we need to be doing in terms of our thoughts and resources in Washington. The other thing I'll just say quickly, the goal is I want to try to, let's see, it's 12 o'clock, is probably take about an hour or so, and then I'll be around for anybody that wants to. I'll stay around because some people are on their lunch hour after if you've got a personal question or comment, and some of my staff will be here too. So why don't we start with anybody that's got the first question or comment, ideally, first comment or things. Yes, sir.
My name is Saul Copeland, and you may have seen my name responding to some of your emails. I am a registered Democrat. However, I was fortunate or happy to see you support the lifting of the debt ceiling because my main purpose is here to talk about jobs. And I represent about 32 friends of mine, some registered Republicans, some Democrats. And approximately 70% of the economy, as you know, is consumer spending. And jobs are the key to consumer spending. So I'm wondering if I can get your promise to make a vote to help pass spending for infrastructure repairs, roads, bridges, water systems, sewer systems. These are all in need of repair throughout the country. Would support an enormous amount of jobs, which then that money would go spending it throughout the economy, and I think give us a strong boost forward in our coming back from the deep recession that we've been in. So I'm wondering if we could have your support for something like that.
Well, I was on the Transportation Committee for 4 years. The chairman's going to be down. Bill Schuster is going to be down in Manatee County. I think in March. I've asked him to come down. He's going to meet with the county commissioners and probably a lot of our transportation people in the area. So we're going to be talking about what more we could do or should do in terms of that. But I do agree with you on the point that small businesses make up 70% of the jobs, maybe higher in the county. I see Bill Bart's back there with a chamber. But I want to do one thing people know about me. I want to do everything I can to help small businesses because at the end of the day, they create most of the jobs in our region. So the better environment we can create for them, the better for everybody. But we do, we have some projects. I mean, 17, it's not right here, but it was a part of my old district. We went from 2 to 4 lanes there. It's a $100 million project. Wares Creek is a project that I helped in terms of getting some funding. So we are looking at transportation opportunities in terms of going forward, but allow that, we're not earmarking, so things have changed the dynamics, but I will say to you, he's going to be here. I'll invite you to come join and meet with the chairman of transportation for the country, and we're going to be talking about that. But thanks for your comment. Got one right over here, sir.
Yes, I'm Geneva Wilford. I've been a resident of this county for 32 years. My main concern, I'm not a political person, but I'm very concerned with the gun issue. And I have just one question. Why shouldn't we return to the ban on assault weapons?
Well, I'm pro Second Amendment myself, but I'll just say this: we need to.
Too. I would never take away anyone's guns, but why do they need?
But I think we need a serious conversation. Obviously, the president's introduced a bill. Harry Reid in the Senate has said that he's going to bring a bill to the floor. But all this needs to be clearly looked at.
How do you stand on the assault weapon ban?
Again, I'm going to wait till we get a bill that comes to us.
Tell me what your feelings are and why. Why do you feel one way or the other?
Well, I just feel like, it's not just about guns, it's also about a lot of other aspects as well.
True.
So that's...
Into that, what do you vote on banning assault weapons that were banned back in Reagan's days with good reason? Why? Why should we keep those weapons around?
Well, that's why I'm doing these listening tours. I want to get everybody's thought. I'm concerned about video games. I'm concerned about our kids being desensitized in terms of movies. There's a lot of factors on that. Okay, thank you.
Got one over here, sir. My name is Lloyd Neville. I've been a Republican all my life, very conservative as they come. I graduated college 57 years ago this month. This is the first time in my life I've been unemployed. That's a big problem. As regard to the guns, why are we talking about assault weapons when there was not an assault weapon used to kill those kids in Connecticut? Why are we confusing the public with this nonsense? We talk about one thing, we're doing nothing. We really do nothing about anything. We talk about unemployment going down. I know from experience that is a lot of nonsense. The government twists things around to report the way they want it to look. They don't give you facts at all. They lie to us every day. We don't do anything about real problems like Benghazi. We don't do anything about the fast and furious gun problem that the government is involved in putting out assault weapons. What's this all about? Why can't we get an answer on this stuff? We talk about things, we do nothing. We let it go 3 months, it goes on the table, and that's the end of that. I tell you, this country is going to pot. It really is. And I don't know how anybody could disagree with that. Why do we say with an interview, 60% of the people in this country figure they will be worse off in 4 months or 4 years than they are now? How did the president get over 50% of the vote? Something's crazy in this country. Are we all nuts? We're giving money to every foreign country you can think of that hate us, and we're letting people starve to death in this country. There's something crazy here. We're not. Common sense is gone.
I don't disagree with you a lot of that. We're on the same page a lot of that. I will say, in terms of Benghazi, I think it's coming in front of the Foreign Affairs Committee. I want to say next week. Secretary Clinton, so that we're going to hopefully get to the bottom of that, and we need to from that standpoint. Danny, do you got somebody who?
Right here.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Julie Lowry. I'm a registered Republican and have been for many, many, many years. I don't understand what is so hard for Washington to understand that we need spending cuts. Could we not just cut 5 to 10% across the board in every department and make Washington do what every household has had to do by cutting its budget?
Yeah. Well, I said first time I got elected, I never ran for office, but 6 years ago, I keep pushing for the idea of a constitutional balanced budget amendment. 49 out of 50 governors have it. It's not just a Republican, a Democrat problem, it's both. And I was telling someone just yesterday, in fact, when I first came there, my first year, 2007, we thought that year we were going to have a balanced budget, no debt. No deficit, I should say. There would be debt, but no deficit is related to that year. We ran $130 billion. Last 4 years, we've run $1.3 trillion every single year, 10 times greater. You're never going to be able to pay it back. We're going to bury our kids and our grandkids. I think it's the biggest issue facing our country, not only in terms of jobs in the economy. The U.S. Chamber came out, CEO, and said that's our biggest threat that we have to our economy. You hear the generals, the admirals saying the biggest threat that we have to our national security is the debt and the deficit. And this, in the next 3 months, is going to be really, a lot of the fight is going to be about that, raising the debt ceiling. I will tell you in terms of the sequestration, that got pushed for 60 days, which means 5% cuts as relates to military and a certain amount of the spending. So that's going to be put in place unless that changes. But there's a lot of people who feel very, very strong that that needs to go in place, because I agree with you. I've been in business for 30 years, been blessed. My wife and I have been in business. But at the end of the day, everybody in the last 4 or 5 years, families, small businesses, have had to make a lot more than 5% cuts. 10, 20%, 30% cuts, and everybody can find 5%. What they won't cut, what they're not looking at cutting, is Social Security and Medicare, but pretty much everything else. So that's kind of where, and that's going to get played out in the next 60 days. That's part of the reason why I'm doing these, because I want to hear what you think.
Over here, sir.
Good morning. My name is Edmundo Delgado. I'm a local pastor here in Manatee County. I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born here in the United States. I grew up in Central America. And I'm here to speak on behalf of those that cannot raise their voice and raise their opinion on everything that is happening. And I want to address the economy. And as a matter of fact, I believe that there is a great chance that we can help this country move forward. And that will be by allowing a immigration reform that will be comprehensive. And I want to give you just an idea. Maybe you can take it to Washington, and I can tell you what can happen. Number one, once these people are able to move about and go back to their countries and visit their families, aviation industry is going to go up. The demand for new planes and all the aviation industry is going to be impacted by that. That will be number one. Number two, the local economies in those places in Latin America are going to thrive again, and we are going to see that immigration will slow because things are going to happen over there as well. Also, the construction industry, the housing industry will skyrocket as well. When people feel the confidence that they can buy a home, they will buy homes. And I can tell you that the Hispanic community in this country is able and capable of helping the United States be the great nation that it always has been. I have great hope in this nation. I have great hope in the government. I'm not here to rant, but to tell you, help us out, help our government. Be the strongest in the world. Number three, the automobile industry, when people are confident that they can work, because that's what they are here for. When they are confident that they can work and have a place to live, they are going to go out and buy cars, even from your dealership. And I'll be one of them. So I have great hope.
Make sure it's a Ford.
Yes, why not? I have to tell you something, and I will be brief. My grandfather, he was an immigrant from Nicaragua many years ago, and he served in the military here. And he worked at a Detroit plant where 4 cars were being made. He went back to Central America, and he started a coffee business. And everything that he did through all his life was taken away when the Sandinistas took over. I'm not here to rant against them either. What I'm saying is that we can do something, we can do it better, and we can make this nation turn around and be powerful and a blessing to many other nations, as it always has been. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, I'll just comment that Marco Rubio's got a package or a proposal. You know, immigration needs to be looked at clearly. I tell people my grandparents were from Finland as immigrants, but I also add that they came here legally. We just want to make sure maybe we need to open the process up where people could come here legally, but I am against illegal immigration, but I am for immigration reform, and we do need to do something about our whole immigration process because it's clearly broken. And so I'm looking forward to that. The president said he was going to lead on it in terms of the last cycle, but hopefully in the next 6 months to a year. I think the sentiment is changed a lot from even 3 or 4 years ago in terms of the country, but the bottom line is that we need a comprehensive immigration package.
Sir, over here, stand up.
Hi, my name's Gene Cotty, and we've had the good fortune to live here for 20 years. My wife and I love this area, and we're glad to see it bouncing back. If I may, to be coherent, I have to read. It's brief. I timed it. It's 2.5 minutes.
2.5 hours, did you say?
Right.
Oh.
I spent more than that working. In my opinion, the following 4 actions of Congress would eventually lead to increasing our annual manufacturing output by about $200 billion per year. First, pass the Open Fuel Standards Act of 2011, which allows the blend of 85% methanol and 15% gasoline, called M85, to compete with pure gasoline and ethanol and gasoline blends at the pump, called normal competition. Second, repass the Alternative Motor Fuels Act of 1988, which gave CAFE mileage credits to auto manufacturers that produce flex fuel cars that accommodated M85 blends. That was the law in '88. Indeed, Ford Motor built one of the best M85 engines on the planet Earth, which is now being utilized by China when they're using their methanol. And strange situation. Third, this is just a suggestion, pass a $100 tax credit for car owners that modify their cars to utilize M85 blends at a cost of about $200. That is, we can all jump on this thing when that happens, and I sure hope it does, for about $200. Fourth and finally, and this is especially different. This is anyway, pass a bill that supports the research and development of the 24/7 renewable energy technology called Otek, that, among other things, can produce low-cost methanol from coal without burning the coal or emitting a molecule of carbon dioxide in the process. 2 arguments to request this bold assertion. First, why should Congress support methanol? Our abundant supply of natural gas can produce methanol that is substantially cheaper per mile than gasoline. Extensive testing, 30 million miles in the 70s, of automobiles, of M85 in the 70s, demonstrated better acceleration, engine condition, and safety than pure gasoline. Here's Ford Motor Company, an important document that people can read on the internet. Dr. Roberta J. Nichols, the leader of Ford's alternative fuels team from 1979 to 1991, published the article, quote, "The Methanol Story," in 2003 that concluded, quote, "All of the reasons that made methanol the best candidate for the long-term, widespread replacement of petroleum-based fuels back in 1980 still exist." Finally, the book, quote, "The Methanol Economy," written by Dr. George Ola and his Southern California colleagues, describes how methanol can produce the same variety of products generated from oil. Second question, why should Congress support Otek? The truly clean coal project of producing methanol from pulverized coals on hundreds of ocean-grazing Otek plant ships, in my opinion, would incredibly help our shipbuilding and coal industries. The book, quote, "The Renewable Energy from the Ocean" by Dr. Avery and Dr. Wu describes testing all the elements worked back in the 70s and 80s, and how different configurations of Otek could, in addition to producing methanol, can produce electricity, fresh water, ammonia for fertilizer, enhanced seafood production, dramatically so, actually done, and other products. Finally, members in Congress, in considering these 4 suggested actions, might read President Reagan's wonderfully positive remarks on signing this bill in '88. And he saw the idea of this. I believe I left a copy with your person.
Yeah, well, give me a copy. I will say this, that I think, as you look through the 90s, where technology was a big boom and really drove our country, I think, I haven't been the biggest friend sometimes of big oil, but let me just tell you, I think energy production can create thousands and tens of thousands of jobs in our country. The Keystone Pipeline, there's no reason not to do that. But I was talking to friends in North Dakota. With the technology we've got now in Oklahoma and Texas, this concept called fracking, as long as we can do it environmentally safe, and they're convinced that they can, there's a lot more opportunity to be able to get at more energy and more opportunities in terms of jobs. I think we could create tens of thousands of jobs, frankly. And then, you look at Pennsylvania, other states where they've got a lot of energy that, because of new technology, we can get at, and it'll create a lot of good paying jobs.
Thank you. My name is Robert Paul, and for years we've heard us talk about the debt problems in this country. and the terminology that you use, we've heard for years and years, is we're passing this on to our kids and grandkids. As a former businessman and as a congressman, I would like to hear a definite estimate from you in years, decades, generations. How long can this country continue to spend at the levels it is and continue to operate?
You know, I don't know exactly, but what I do know is we're looking at $1 trillion deficits going forward. I mean, this last administration, or the last 4 years, has been over $5 trillion in additional debt. A trillion, as you know, is 1,000 billions. We're at $16.4 trillion in debt. And the way we're going, it's $1 trillion a year. I was hopeful, and I'm still hopeful, that the president realizes, and he knows, that he needs to provide some leadership on this, because the bottom line, we have a very divided government in Washington, where the Democrats control the White House and in terms of the Senate. We have, you know, the House side, but we've got to find a way together to deal with the debt and bend the curve. We're talking about a proposal, which is too long for me, is the idea of a 10-year proposal where you could get to a balanced budget amendment. Because the dynamic we're in, you're spending trillions of dollars that we don't have. We only take in enough money to pay the bills through the end of July, basically. The rest of the year, we got to go borrow the money from the Chinese and Japanese every single year. That's the wrong thing. We should be living within our means. And if you look at the last 50 years, I've said this, Democrats and Republicans, they've only balanced the budget 5 times in the last 50 years. We haven't had a budget from the Senate, and they're required to produce one in 3 years, over 3 years. It's crazy, but that's got to clearly change, and I'm hopeful that the president, we'll hear some about his on Monday, but that he's got to tackle this event. We've got to do it on a bipartisan basis, and the reason for it on a bipartisan basis, because of the demographics in our country. We have 10,000 people a day turning 65 every day for the next 30 years. And Medicare, the cost of health care has gone up, Social Security, people are living longer, so that's taken a bigger and bigger bite out of our economy. But the bottom line is we've got to find a way to bend the curve on the spending. Get to your point and answer your question. I don't know if it's 2 years, if it's 6 years, if it's 8 years, but at some point we're going to wake up one morning, it's going to implode if we keep doing what we're doing now. And I can't tell you how emotional I can get, strong in terms of not only the House floor, but with fellow members, Democrats and Republicans about this, because as someone that understands numbers pretty well, you can't continue to do this without putting everything that people have worked for at risk.
Right here, sir. The young lady right here.
I'm Dr. Dale Burrows, and I've lived here for 22 years.
Good to see you, Doctor.
It's good seeing you again. And I'm a Michigander myself. I grew up there. And so you'll understand this probably. When I grew up, Detroit was known as the jewel of the industrial world. Michigan was known at that time to have the best public school system in the entire United States. When I left, it was that. 15 years later, after Coleman Young and his worldview came into Detroit, it became a pit. And now we already know what's happening in Detroit as to where we are going with this. That same mindset is in the government of the United States now. And so I don't want to see our country end up like Detroit ended up and drive entrepreneurs, free those who have that mindset, free enterprise. And that's what seems to be happening. That worldview, that same worldview that has turned Detroit into a money pit is happening in this United States. We have the exact same. And I grew up as a Democrat. My parents were as well. We were Reaganized. We said no. It wasn't the Democratic Party. We left it. It left us. What can be done by conservatives to get this thing turned around? Because we're headed towards Detroit as a country.
Well, it's not just Detroit. If you look at Illinois, if you look at California, they're both basically on the verge of bankruptcy. I mean, they should be bankrupt. I mean, they owe so much more than their revenues. And unfortunately, we've got these case studies where you can see what happens. And that's why we're up here having to deal with these issues every 3 months and 6 months. It's because we don't have the money to pay the bills. And he's got to come to us to raise the debt ceiling. Otherwise, there's no money. And if there's no money, it means that then you got to start setting priorities in terms of where you're going to spend the money. You got to pay the interest on the debt, but then there's a lot of things that won't get paid. So that's why we're in such a catch-22. This is all catching up to us. We've been living beyond our means for the last 4 or 5 years, probably the last 50, but especially the last 4 years. And you can't continue to do that. Just like what you said, at some point you end up like Detroit. By the way, Michigan, it seems like it's getting a little bit better, but it has had its struggles, but it was a great place to grow up in, but it's been tough.
Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate the good job you're doing. I've met you before, Mark Ogles. I was in the Florida House for Sarasota and Manatee for 8 years. I'm here today on behalf of the Likes family and my boss, John Wakefield, with a little bit of good news, and I just wanted to share it with you. PACE is adopted in Florida, and if you're interested in it, you can go to pacenow.com or ygreen.com, and it could create in Manatee County 1,500 jobs, 2,000 jobs in Sarasota County, with a pool of money that comes from Barclays Bank and local banks for people to do energy efficiency, water conservation, and best of all, harden their homes and businesses from hurricanes so that they can get out of Citizens and, per state law, have their property insurance rates drop up to 40 to 50%. We're very excited about helping your district because we have not been working in Sarasota or Manatee County, but we feel with the people's advocacy for PACE and the great leadership we have on the commission now, this could create several thousand jobs in your district. So I'm just asking for you to look at this and perhaps meet with the Like when you have time.
Yeah. Anything I can do that'll create 2,000 jobs here, I might want to be helpful. 3,000, okay? So there's no question about that. So get us your material. I will say this, that I am very bullish, frankly, on the country. We've got to get that fixed. But just in terms of Manatee and Sarasota County in our state, I do feel a sense that things are getting better. But we've got this dark cloud hanging over us, this thing called debt and deficit, my opinion, that we can't afford to keep putting off.
Right here, sir. This lady. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jean Walker, and I'm here today because I want to talk about jobs and unemployment, and I want you to remember when you go to Congress, remember my face, because I am a long-term unemployed individual. I lost my job last April. My job was eliminated in Lakewood Ranch, and I'm 63 years old, and I can't find another job. I'm a college graduate. I have excellent computer skills. I've been on 23 interviews since last April, and I can see by the 30 to 40-something managers who are interviewing me that they look at me and think that, you're smart and you're competent and you've got a lot of experience, but you look like my mother, and I don't want my mother working for me. So.
Well, you don't look 63. I was going to say 43.
Well, maybe. Thank you, but I am 63. So there's a real problem among people who are over 55 and unemployed. And my suggestion, I have a suggestion for you, and that is that if companies are going to lay off people who are over 55, then I think that they should be responsible for paying their unemployment, and I mean the full freight of their unemployment, so that at least they'll have some disincentive to lay off older employees, because it's very, very difficult for older people to find work again. There's only about a 6% chance of getting another job, and I'm not talking about even a comparable job. So thank you.
Now, I can tell you that it didn't seem that long ago that I remember talking to someone, unemployment in the Bi-County here was 2.8%, 2.9%. You couldn't find people to work. And I think we'll get back to that. That's where we need to get back to, because, part of our debt and deficit problem is because we have 7, 8%, maybe 9% of people unemployed. If we can bring that down to 4 or 5%, you got another $500 billion that goes into the Treasury. So we have every incentive. The biggest incentive should be helping our companies be more successful. I will tell you a story, though, in terms of one of the reasons I love about working here, because in some of that, I was in the pharmacy the other day, and they have people, old days they didn't, but they're probably 75, 80 or something, and I go up and pay my bill, and she'll say, "Son, is there anything else you need?" Now I'm 61, so it's great having some of the seniors working. I thought to myself, wow, I love it.
Right here, sir. Over here.
Here, I got it.
Okay. Good afternoon, Congressman. Tom Whitaker. In this discussion that's going on about gun control, is there a voice in Congress asking the question of the President when it comes to executive orders, or Senator Reid when it comes to the Senate? Could you please point to that language in the Constitution that has given to them the power to do anything in terms of gun control or otherwise infringe upon the inherent right to keep and bear arms? And I believe they're still taking the same oath that they've been taking ever since the beginning, where they're required to support and defend the Constitution between all enemies, foreign and domestic. So who's giving the clarion call to hold them to their oath in Congress?
Well, a lot of people are concerned about executive orders because a lot of this I think should get dealt with in the Congress. A lot of people feel strongly about that. But I think we have to let this play out a little bit. I don't know that there's going to be some things get considered and some things get done, but I want to wait and see how this develops over the next month or so.
I'd like to concur with this gentleman back here. The Second Amendment means what it says. People try to put words and take words out and whatever. It means exactly what it says, shall not be infringed upon. In Article 14, Section 1, if you read that, it restricts the states from interfering with the right to bear arms. A lot of people don't look at that section. That's very important. I believe in the Constitution 100%. And when you take oath on a Bible to uphold, swear, uphold, and defend the Constitution, that's the way it should be done. Besides that, I want to point out one other thing. Jobs are very important, but there's one sector of the economy that everybody seems to be stepping on, and that's retired people. As a retired person, I had saved all my life, and I put money in the bank. So when I got to retirement, I wouldn't have to count on the government. My income has been cut about 90% because of what Ben Bernanke has been doing with the interest rates. All they seem to care about is the stock market. The stock market is important, but that isn't the only thing that makes this economy run. There's more important things out here. I've been in real estate for 30 years. Interest rates, if they go up, people will still buy real estate. And then I'll touch on another subject, ethanol and gasoline. It is no good. Ethanol has its purpose, but not in gasoline. You lose 3 to 4 miles per gallon when you use ethanol on your mileage. Pure gas, you burn more pure gas because of it over the long run. So we're not saving gasoline. Those are things that need to be looked into.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right in terms of interest rates. They have suppressed them artificially. If you think about really, if you understand, most of you do math fairly good, historically, interest rate in terms of what we paid out our country in terms of debt and deficit is 4 to 5%, and they're artificially keeping it low at almost zero. But if you had normal rates, you would have another $600 billion a year in interest or so. So it gets back to your point, but also along that line, when they artificially keep the rates down, CD rates and everything else that our seniors count on, they do their planning on, their retirement on, it also gets to a point where they can't even get 1% or 0.5% on a CD, and that is a big issue as well, and that's what you're talking about, because they're artificially low as a result of...
The younger generation has no place to save.
Yeah.
Get any return.
Yeah.
Right here, sir.
Yes, my name is Mike Horning. I live in Bradenton. And it's my understanding at this point in time that President Obama has signed 946 executive orders. The previous 5 or 6 presidents before him in total signed less than 75, all of them together. This would indicate to me that Obama is an impotent president when it becomes to partisanship, putting together a consensus, leading. His style of leadership is nothing more than a bully on the playground. You do it my way, or I'm going to do something anyhow. And I know that as citizens, I don't think we can stop that. We're not in Washington every day. We don't know every day what goes on in Washington. Our representatives do know. Now, I think all of us know that he signed 23 executive orders recently regarding guns and legislation thereof. But the other 923, I don't know if anybody else heard anything about, but I didn't, and I am on the computer quite a bit. Our representatives, that should be one of your obligations to us, to stand up and let us know what is going on behind the scenes, so to speak. And I would like to see that done. I get your newsletter now, and I appreciate that. And but there's so much more that I think there are times when I have to agree with the people that say it doesn't make any difference who you vote for. Because when all this is going on and we see the people that we elected not stand up for us, it's like, what did we vote for that person for instead of the other guy?
Yeah. Well, it's a leadership style. When we've got a lot of big issues coming up, a lot of these big issues can't be resolved unless there's some bipartisanship. It's the way the Founding Fathers set up the country and the Constitution. We have a divided government. But, you know, I got to tell you just personally, when we're talking about some of these issues and he's being critical, you know, of our party, even if it was a Democrat in there or a Republican and critical of the he's got to provide some leadership, because you have to be able to work together on a bipartisan basis. If you go back to Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, you'd hear they'd argue like heck all day. At the end of the day, they'd sit down, have a scotch or whatever, they'd drink bourbon, and they'd figure out a way to get something done. And that's the thing that's so frustrating for someone like me that's in business. I care about one thing, is moving the country forward. And like Reagan said, some days you don't get a whole loaf, because it's politics. You get a half a loaf, and then you work on the other half. But we have to get some leadership. But his style, and that's just not something I just personally see. I see other people say the same thing. He's not as comfortable reaching out sometimes, I think, as he needs to, because we really need to figure out where the way our Constitution, it's the best Constitution in the world, but the way it works, the Founding Fathers didn't want us to work together unless we're willing to reach across the aisle, find some compromise or negotiate in good faith. And there's not enough of that that's getting done in Washington. But if we don't, we're going to end up with more gridlock, more uncertainty, and it's going to be worse for everybody. We have to find a way to work together, stand on our principles. We're not going to cave in. They've got their principles. They're not going to cave in. But 70–80% relates to small business and other things we do agree on. And there should be things that we can get done. And I do agree with you in terms of executive orders. In my mind, it's completely out of hand from that standpoint.
Back here, sir, in the back.
Yeah.
Vern?
Yes, sir. Yeah, my name is Ronnie. My wife and I, Lisa, we've been married 26 years. I'm a native Floridian. And just want to let you know that I think right now both parties are the same. They're worthless. And I'm serious. And I just want to say, first of all, Joni in your office made me feel special. I was a member of the Special Operations Response Team. I did the war on drugs. And they didn't find my record for 23 years from the Army. And Joni took her time and found my records, and I'm getting good care at the Bay Pine, so really made me feel special and everything else. I was a sharpshooter sniper. And with this thing with the guns and everything else, the poor cops, it takes them 5 to 10 minutes to respond. I got to do whatever it takes to defend my house. I'm the man of the house, and I'm more worried about I'm hurting somebody else, and then a paid liar lawyer or psychiatrist that runs this country. But the main reason I'm speaking up here, Vern, is I work at the post office distribution center. Last 12 years on midnight shift, and they want to close the facility. When the two ones up in Tampa are leased, when we own the land and the building there, you're talking about jobs. You're talking about 300 jobs maybe going to Tampa or Fort Myers. When you have so much opportunity here, my one son graduated from University of Michigan. My other son graduated from Stanford. He said, hey, Dad, when 2014, when the Panama Canal opens up, guess what's going to be a big factor is the Port of Manatee, because they're coming out with double or triple in the Port of Manatee. There's so much growth here with tourism. The population's getting older. You got tourism, retirees, and drug trafficking to stimulate this economy. If anybody's joking, I'm a native Floridian, born and raised in Miami. I've been out in the Everglades where I had to turn around where I saw a Lear jet that was abandoned back in the late 70s and 80s and everything else. But we own the facility at Minnesota, and we've been top 5 in the country for years, and this is how a lot of veterans and everything else get their medicine. Plus, my family has thousands of acres up in upstate New York. We haven't been able to grow any farm because of the subsidies that they give us not to grow farm stuff. And I'm a member of the Iroquois, Oneida Indian Nation, Bear Clan. We get $104 million profit from the smart white men that run the Indian casinos, but the Bureau of Indian Affairs still gives our nation $6.4 million, which is ridiculous. We're independent, so we send it out west to like the Navajo or the Hopi tribe. What a waste of money. But I wish you'd look at the Minnesota plant. We own the land and the building out there.
Yeah, we've been working on that, and we're going to continue to push. We've been behind the employees there, but I do want to say thank you for your service to the country. I appreciate that. Yeah, well, thanks. And Joni's great. Works with all our veterans, so we appreciate it. By the way, how many veterans do we have in the room? Let's give them all a round of applause. All our veterans.
Stand up. I got it.
Yes, sir.
Kerry Newcomb, former business owner. I had 80 consecutive profitable quarters, and I sold my business to another company in Austin, Texas when I got out of it. I thought about this long and hard to think about something specific I could give you to generate jobs. And what I put down, and I have it written out here, is this will probably sound kind of wonkish, but it will work, and that's to eliminate the tax depreciation schedules for business. I did think about what is something that would actually get passed that both parties could agree to. And the thing of it is with business and small business, when you spend $1, the dollar's gone. For example, I spent $10,000 to put in a new carpet, but the IRS says you can't expense that. That's a 40-year carpet. You can only take off 2.5% for the next year for 40 years. Well, I sold that location 5 years later. So in the real world, that carpet got torn out and it went away, but I actually had to spend the money, and it was on a depreciation schedule. I think that if you could change that one little bit of the tax code for small business, for people with 20, 25, 30 employees, they could hire 1 or 2 more employees just by eliminating the depreciation schedule. And since most congressmen and senators probably don't understand that or care anyway, I think you could get it through.
I think you're right about the understanding, but let me mention, would you put a cap on that in terms of the amount? Let's say 10,000's one, 100,000's another, but if someone spent $1 million on equipment, would you let them fully depreciate the first year?
No cap, he says.
No cap. No cap, yeah. Okay, well, we do have bonus depreciation. They've adjusted. I think that you get a lot of stuff you can write over 5 years. So, but you can get 50% bonus depreciation the first year, and then plus another 10%.
I'm coming around.
So, but I like the idea of 100% expensing, and I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Right here, sir. Stand up. I got it. Yep, I got it.
My name's Dave Brenneman, and I want to know why Mr. Obama, when he was going around talking to everyone about gun legislation, never went to where 90% of the crime is, which was in the bad areas of town. I mean, this is where it's not the honest gun owner.
Yeah.
It's the people who are living in the bad areas who shoot each other every day. Chicago has, what, 20 deaths or more a day, a week, and you don't hear a word about that from anybody.
Yeah, there's no question. I was born in Detroit, and it's tough. New York, I mean, Chicago, New York, and those kinds of things. No, you're right about that. Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Judith Alpert. I'm from Rhode Island, but I'm a Floridian now. Very different down here.
I'm glad to have you.
I have a few comments. I want to commend you on your policy view on oil, on your thinking about not drilling in the Gulf, because I love the Gulf of Mexico, and I also think we should close the loopholes so the oil companies don't profit as much as they do on our backs. About the gun issue, Mr. Rubio said that even if we passed the ban on assault weapons, the children would have been shot anyway. Well, I think if it was one of Mr. Rubio's children, he might feel differently. And I also think if they banned the kind of gun that the woman had, that her son was allowed to get to kill those children, then those children wouldn't have been killed. And that's the kind of gun that should have a ban on it. Our founding fathers didn't want us to live in an armed camp, which is what's happening now, even coming into this building today. It's an armed camp now. On government spending, I don't know if you ever read the book Animal Farm, but that's what our country is. You people in Congress get all the perks that we don't get, and nobody ever talks about this. I can't believe it. I mean, you get $1 million bathrooms, you get $1 million gyms, you get pensions for the rest of your lives, you get health care that we can't even possibly think about getting. Why don't you cut yourselves? Why don't you give yourself a little bit of less money in different places, pensions, salaries, whatever. And that would help the budget, don't you think?
Well, it's a good point, and you can look at this. I think the last year we cut 7% of our budget, the year before 7%. Sequester goes through, which I think is probably going to go through, just my sense of it. That'll be another 7 or 8%. But, you know, we need to cut a lot more spending than that. And I don't disagree with you on some of the things from what you're saying, but we've got a lot of big issues in terms of spending. It's not just the Congress we need to cut. There's a lot of other things that need to be looked at. Thanks for your comments.
Well, I'm asking two things. The first is that you continue to let go of Social Security and Medicare and don't touch them, and that I know that Social Security funds have been at times been transferred and used in other accounts. And as a representative and member of your House Ways and Means Committee and the member of a Health Subcommittee, I know you have authority to stop raiding Social Security funds and to maintain Social Security and Medicare without changes to age or benefits. Now, how do you do this? Second major point, I've emailed, I've written to you many times about this. Secondly, I'm asking you to significantly reduce military spending. How can I say this? I have done reading. Thank you. It's not easy, I know, but I have done reading and research on defense and most recently read former President Reagan's budget director, David Stockman, comments. Number one, our defense budget is 2 times greater in inflation-adjusted dollars as defense budget of the Dwight Eisenhower in '61. Number two, our February 2011 defense budget was 5 times greater than that of China. Number three, our defense budget constitutes over 40% of the world's entire military budget. Number four, our budget is larger than cumulative budget of the next 14 nations in the top 15. So Stockman reports, and he says that no defense budget goals today justify this defense spending. He further suggests we have developed a warfare state whose military spending excesses are the factor in economic decline and imminent fiscal emergency. Now finally, I ask you to boldly and courageously promote real audits of military contractors, account for excessive spending, confront the lobbyists, and stop pork barrel earmarks for political self-interest. And I pray that you can do this. You have a lot to do going back to Washington, but I'm very concerned about my children, grandchildren. We got to do something.
Well,
Thank you, sir.
You got a good point. Let me just say this. Anybody know in here what we spent on our military? $700 billion. Okay, well, the number I see is $700 billion. It might be $800 billion, but what I heard. But we're running a $1.3 trillion deficit. If you eliminate all the military, you'd still be $500–600 billion if you got rid of everything, which you can't in a world that we live in. But let's say, no matter how much you cut it, we've got a lot of big other things. Let me just throw out at you. We've gone from 30 million people on food stamps to 50 million last 4 years. You've gone from unemployment. My parents worked in the factory, both of them, Detroit factories. My brother worked in the factory. It used to be with the UAW, you get 13 weeks unemployment, then you get another 13 weeks. 26, half a year. Today it's 2 years. There's a lot of things that we're taking on. There's, I think the number is 100 million checks that we send out of Washington a month without, and I have to verify, I think this is the number, without Social Security or Medicare. So we have become a very entitled society. I'm not saying all the programs don't make some sense to some people, but the bottom line is, you know, when you start looking at $1.3 trillion cuts, now Medicare, I'm on that committee, as you mentioned, $550 billion, Medicaid, $250 billion, another $50 billion in increase this year, probably $850 billion. So it's 35% Medicare and Medicaid, our match, the federal government's match, of our total tax receipts that we sent in. Social Security, $700 billion. So now you're at 60% of every dollar before you get the interest on the debt, before you get the national security, before you get the food stamps, before you get to a lot of other things. So my point on it is, it's not just about the military, and I think there's things we can do with the military in terms of cutting. You really got to look at everything. Now, I'm going to fight for Medicare and Social Security because seniors have been promised that, and that's not necessarily the whole problem or any of the problem. It's all the other stuff that we've accumulated along the way that we are now paying that I think puts pressure on that. And then I'll just leave one other quick point, is when they eliminated the trust fund for Social Security in the 60s, that's part of the reason that we've got a problem, because they say Social Security is viable to 2034, but they're assuming that the federal government is in the ability to pay off, to put the trust fund money back that they've borrowed. So that's a whole other discussion. But the whole budget thing is complicated, and we're working on that. Yes, sir.
Congressman Cliff Phelan from Bradenton, and nice to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
I'll have to tell you, as I look into the future, I don't think I've ever been so discouraged about the future of this country based on a lot of what we talked today, the budget, the spending, all of the entitlement programs. The greatest tragedy for this country happened just a couple of months ago when we didn't elect Mitt Romney, in my personal opinion. Are you comfortable with what the Republican Party is doing to work into the future so that in 2 years and again in 4 years the Republicans will be able to get the votes back in where we can still maintain control of the Congress and maybe make some headway into the Senate?
Well, I mean, we just got through this election. Frankly, you know, the American people were in a democracy. They made the decision. And now we've got to find a way to work together, do the best interest for the American people. But I am concerned, mainly the biggest thing is about the debt and the deficit. I think our economy comes back in a big way in Florida. I think there's a lot of positive things, but this debt and deficit is a huge issue. When you just take the time to go on the line and look at it in terms of what the impact that this can have at some point. So I'm looking to the future. I'm an optimist. But really, a lot of it's going to come down in the next 3 or 4 months, how we're going to deal with, you know, the debt ceiling, sequestration, what they call CR's continuing resolution that we've got to deal with. So we've got a lot of things that we've got to deal with in the next 90 days or months. But yeah, and a lot of it's created because of the deficits and debt we've been running. You know, every time we turn around, every 6 months, we're getting back into this discussion about shutting down the government or something. That uncertainty is not good for anybody, a business guy or anybody else, and it's a bad thing, and we got to fix it. And I'm hopeful we can move in that direction in the next 3 or 4 months.
Sir, we have 2 more quick questions, comments, and then you're going to be here for a few minutes to anybody that would like to see you.
Vern, thank you for having this meeting. I would just point out, I was reading the paper this morning, and I have come to your meetings in the past, and we've talked about Medicare and Medicaid and the President's new health care plan. I would just like to point out that based upon the past resident in today's paper, the United States ranks last in this report in its health care. It's more costly. We die earlier. We are not being served by the medical service that we presently have, and thank God for Obamacare coming in. It might help a little bit. No, I have more. The other, okay, I have to make it quick, I'm sorry. But last year you voted to defund Planned Parenthood and add to the war on women. Every woman in this room right now should be appalled at the Republican stance. If you get raped, you're not going to get pregnant. Now, how stupid is that? Those statements from members of your party, Vern, you've got to take a hold of these things and tell them to cut the BS. Now, recently, in this new session, another bill has been presented to eliminate the funding totally for Planned Parenthood. Are you going to support that bill, or are you not? I think every woman in this room deserves that. And also for all of the gun advocates here, over 900 people have been shot dead since those kids were killed in Connecticut. 900. Tell me, what do you want to do? You want to continue the murder? We have a constitution. I'm wrapping it up. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll take a couple more questions, and then I'll be around for anybody's comments or thoughts or anything after the meeting. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Congressman, for coming today. I'm not much of a good speaker myself, so hopefully I'll be able to get everything I want.
No.
Thanks. Anyways, I just wanted to say, kind of touch on some of these comments. This fellow over here about the debt ceiling. If we continue to increase our debt ceiling, and I know a majority of you are worried about your grandchildren, but I myself am worried about my children. We have 3 children that are currently in public schools, 1 at home school, I'm sorry, but you know, I'm a small business owner, and we're not even going to be able to, I can't see where we're going to get the money to put them in college. So raising the debt ceiling, I mean, and then to see the last 4 years of the needless spending. And I think I noticed the post that you made about the F-16s that were sent to Egypt. The comments of you know, bringing the deficit down for our military, you know, I agree with you, but also the needless spending of sending the F-16s to Egypt, sending the weapons to Mexico, and also to Syria to help Al-Qaeda fight the Syrian rebels. I mean, those are the little things that are getting done that, yeah, those need to be cut back. We need to stop supporting other nations and start focusing on our nation. And to think, I don't know how he got reelected. I'm not sure it was legal. But to think that we have to spend another 4 years with the same president we had 4 years ago that has brought this country down, and I don't think his ambition is to bring the country up. And my question is to you, is there anybody in Congress, anybody in the Senate that's bold enough to stand up to this tyrant? So there's so many things to look at, and I think our Second Amendment is worth holding on to because we have a tyrant in office.
Well, one of the things, you know, I have a friend of mine that said even before what happened in terms of Connecticut, he heard about it. He said the 20-year-old male locked up in a room with mental issues playing video games. And you know, our boys are older, but I'm going to be looking at these video games and everything else because I do think it desensitizes a lot of our movies, I don't want to be, but that's just, but you come into the fact where you got to deal with not only Second Amendment, you get in the First Amendment and these other things as it relates to the Constitution. But again, I hear what you're saying. This is something we've got to.
Everybody knows when I saw that in the video games, they no longer play.
Yeah, well, I agree.
I applaud you for coming to a town hall meeting. The reason being I raised that question because of the fact that Obama keeps campaigning every week or every day. Now, I think what Congress, I sent messages to Congressman Session because he wrote me a letter, Congressman Pierce, and I said, Congress people or Speaker Boehner should send all the Congress people to every state, to every county, and talk to town hall people to compete with Obama's campaigning. And I think we should be able to, compete with them. And my other question is taxes. The small businesses, they said, are, President Obama wants to tax those 250,000. They're not millionaires. Who is he kidding? He has not run a business himself. I'm not even sure if he knows how to, balance his budget at home. And the other thing that I would like to mention is about guns. I'm a medical doctor, I am retired, and I know about guns. I'm an ex-military guy. And the thing is, they lack the sensitivity, and even President Obama missed the problem. Who are the most people that kills guns? Number one, criminals. Number two are those mentally deranged persons. And we should make an issue about mentally retarded persons. And the families, like for example, the psychiatrist in Colorado, she knew that she wrote her an email, and then she didn't do anything. That could have been avoided. And the mother in Newton knew that his son was problematic even when he was in high school. And she should have been reported.
Thank you. Okay. Well, let me just conclude, and I'm going to be around. Anybody has a question or a comment? How many people, just out of curiosity in the room, are on our website, buchanan.house.gov, or get our emails? It really does. We have surveys. We have other things. I can better represent you. It's not about me personally. I mean, I know someone mentioned about all the things we get up there. I mean, I've been in business a long time. I'm into public service. I've been very blessed and fortunate. I want to help you with your issues the best I can. I look at some of the young people here and just make this a better place. And you don't see my passion as much sometimes, but I can tell you yesterday I gave a very passionate plead about dealing with debt and deficit and getting our financial house in order, because it is about, down here at the Boys and Girls Club, they said children make up 25% of the population, but 100% of the future. It was right here in Bradenton. And that's what I'm fighting for, is for our kids and our grandkids. My wife's here, we've been blessed, and it's about helping the next generation. And in terms of the Congress, it is, someone said, I love the idea. People ask me, how do you deal with being up there? I love the idea of serving, giving something back. I hate the dysfunctionality of it and the way it works. We have a Democrat in terms of a president. We have a Democrat Senate. We have a Republican House. But if you don't find a way to work together, it's all about gridlock. And that's the reality we're in. It might have been different, but that's everybody's played a hand of cards. That's the cards that we're dealing with. So I take the attitude, what's in the best interest of this community? What's in the best interest of our country going forward? Thank you, and God bless.